Nice. Oh, it even says live and everything.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so we are group 3, and this is discussion for post number 7, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm Hannah Del Rosario.
I'm Teddy Talby. I'm Alex Lyon.
I'm Paola Sanchez.
I'm Nicole McEwen. All right.
Well, on the post, she said that she wanted us to talk about that, the article that was talking about why crashing was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The whole section, if you guys want to start there.
Sure.
Where did she say that?
Yeah.
It showed links to pages. It was like page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4.
Oh.
Okay, I'm gonna pull that up real quick.
Yeah, let's see.
We didn't really need to do like anything in the post about it, but it was just good for our discussion and to keep our discussion going.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want to bring up some points right now while we're looking this up.
Well, it was basically saying that, because in those videos of that guy talking, he was basically saying that you don't learn languages from learning about, grammar,
Mm-hmm.
classes, and that it's basically just setting you up to, be able to understand enough that you can then acquire it by, being in environments where people are talking and you're reading and hearing it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that you don't when you're just coming up with sentences in another language, you can only do that from the knowledge you've acquired and not from the knowledge you've learned. Yeah, was what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the article was saying that that's completely wrong and that there's all this evidence and these studies that have been done saying that it's not true at all and grammar instruction is completely necessary.
Well, I feel like it's also necessary, to even just understand how to form sentences. When I was hearing him talk in his video, I'm thinking, well, yeah, but the only reason I would know how to form a sentence and to look at it and he was like, you can visualize it and look at it and check it before you speak. That's the only reason why I know how to do that is because of the grammar lessons and the vocab lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How are you supposed to learn what each word means without being taught it, you know?
Yeah, especially because you have to, because it's a different sentence format and than what we're used to as a second language acquisition. But
I'm trying to learn Spanish by myself, and I just downloaded some random apps and stuff that I've been playing with. I'm trying to teach myself Spanish, but I feel like I've been having a really hard time with a few words that are, it'll say this word can mean it, but it can also mean it is, and it can also mean this, and so then and it doesn't ever it's not teaching you grammar. It's people saying things, and you have to translate it or repeat it and stuff like that. And so I feel like those kinds of things have been giving me a problem because I don't know when it means one thing and when it means another thing. I feel like that's just I was thinking about that, about how I was I need grammar instruction right now.
Mm-hmm.
In this.
Yeah. So. It's almost the reasoning behind everything that you know in order to understand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How are you supposed to be able to use it if you don't know how, Yeah, and you can pick up things from hearing it from other people, but I don't think that means you're actually learning it completely, because it could be formally wrong, most people won't understand you. It's a slang thing that you learned or you picked up. So
or when you're in a conversation, you can talk to somebody and be like, no, you're supposed to say it this way. It's that's technically a grammar lesson.
Mm-hmm.
If they correct you, that's technically a grammar lesson right there. And so you're yeah, that's kind of weird.
Well, and a lot of the rationale behind English only teaching is that we want students to be successful in the English speaking world, which is totally valid. But if you're going to try and say that they can be successful without understanding at least the basics of English grammar, then that's problematic.
Mhm.
I feel like the biggest problem though with like English only instruction is, I mean, I don't really know how that would affect like language acquisition, but it's a big problem when it comes to like learning content because then they're like behind in all that while they're catching up in language.
Yeah, and especially because at the speed that you talk, they're not going to understand. Especially with the older they get, the bigger language you're using, you know, the bigger words, bigger language, more complex language, and the bigger words you're using, they're not going to be able to catch on right away. They're going to fall behind so far to the point where they're just going to give up, and it's just going to, especially if you're coming from a background like zero English, it would be really hard.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the article is basically saying like all these reasons, like we've said about why Crashing was wrong. But then like I was kind of confused about it though, because at the very end of the article, like one of the last sentences, I even wrote it down because I was annoyed about it. So K6 children are able to acquire another language with little to no instruction. So like basically going against what the whole article was about. Because I guess and then it was saying that like, you know, this article is focusing more on adult users like learning ELL, not kids. And so I guess I'm kind of confused about how, you know.
Well, because then also Crashing was saying that kids and adults all learn languages the same way. He's saying that you don't need grammar, you don't need vocab.
But he did say that like adults need some of that grammar, like more so than kids do, though. I remember reading I think it was what he was saying. He was saying like adults need 95% acquisition and then 5% learning, but then kids need 100% learning.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that too. But then like the article's saying that, like, I don't know. The way it made it seem to me was that I was saying like adults need more like, you know, 50-50 or maybe even more grammar than like just being like put in situations where they're talking and reading and stuff. But then it's still saying that kids will get it no matter what. So I don't know. I feel like the research on these things changes so much that it's just safest to always do everything, you know, to balance as you can.
Yeah. Well, and also you're not going to make everyone happy, but at the same time, it's like if you do your best and, you know, like try to accommodate ways that would help everyone, then I guess that's all you can do.
I definitely think it's a mix though, like for sure. Yeah. Just, better be safe than sorry.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
I was going to change the subject, so if you want to say anything about this, go for it.
No, go ahead. I was sort of going to go in a different direction, so you're totally good.
I think something that kind of struck my fancy and I really enjoyed reading was about the sign language. Language. Just because it hits close to home with, you know, like knowing sign language, taking sign language classes, growing up with sign language. And now, I don't know if you guys read my nice little fun fact, but my nephew is doing sign language too. So it was really fun to read all the facts about it.
Oh,
yeah, I saw that. That was really cool.
Like, have you noticed like the differences between like, I don't know, like different types of ASL, I guess, or like slang between different like areas or anything?
Oh yeah, my instructor for ASL is from Washington D.C. and he would always talk about how in Washington D.C. like you have certain signs that represented things like the Redskins. He was a huge Redskins fan, and so over there you do Redskins as something that's like super. I don't even remember what it was. But something that was super just like easy and a quick sign, as over here, you would just spell it out because like, you know, like you could say like football and then you'd spell it out. But yeah, so there are definitely different words. There's a lot of slang. He's like, since I'm deaf, I can sign it this way. You're not deaf. You can't do that. Like so it's definitely a complex language, and it's really cool to just be able to see people communicate like that. It was just interesting to me.
Is there a particular reason, like, why you learn sign language and then your nephew is, or just because it's like a cool thing to know, like another language?
So my family has a family friend who, the dad used to coach football up at Western, which is how our families met. And their daughter is deaf. And so they knew sign language, or they learned sign language. And then as we kind of grew closer with them and everything, we started taking sign language classes to be able to communicate with her. And then we really liked it, so we just kind of kept going. And then we stayed into the parent-to-parent program that the mom of our family friends was the owner of, or like the founder of the program for her daughter. And so they moved to Arizona for better resources for their daughter, and they kept the program going. So we kept being a part of the parent-to-parent program. And then my sister is actually a kind of funny. Her job title is an intervener. We tease her about it all the time because of the name of it. But she started out as a para with a boy in the life skills class. And he's now at Fairhaven, and she uses sign language with him. And so my family has just always kind of been using sign language just between us. Like if we're across the room, we'll just like, instead of yelling at each other, we'll just make a sign or something like that. And then also my sister and I have kind of believed the research done where babies who use sign language are not as frustrated because their cognitive level is high enough to be able to understand language to the point where they can't say it themselves because of their developmental level. Whereas if you were to do the signs, they can actually they can tell you what they want. So for example, like my nephew's name is Paxton. If he's really hungry and he wants milk, he runs over to the fridge and he goes like this, because this is milk in sign language. Whereas, you know, like instead of just crying and we're like, well, what do you want? What do you want? Because he can't physically say milk yet, because he doesn't have the sounds and the developmental level to say it. So we've always believed the research on that it helps the frustration levels.
That's really cool. Did not know that.
I think that touches on how in the article they were talking about how it compares to spoken language development, and it's basically the exact same. But I like how you were able to provide a deeper perspective on, like, yes, it is the same in terms of development, like language development as a whole, but like what are the other benefits that learning sign language has? So like emotional benefits or like social.
At Kids World, we started an infant round, and so we all had to learn sign language, like a few basic things to work with the babies. And I felt like sometimes, like there was a few times when we were able to use some of the signs before they could speak. And I definitely thought it was a thing. Like if we like maybe were more consistent about it, like they definitely used it. But the article, I mean, as far as I understood, I thought it was saying that that's actually like not a thing, which is weird because I feel like it's a really like widely known fact that it is. Right. Yeah, that's kind of why it was really interesting for me. Yeah, is because I felt like she really differentiated the two and said that they like don't really go hand in hand. Yeah, because she said that it develops at the same time. Yeah, generally, but maybe it's just like it varies like kid to kid. Like some kids will be able to get it faster than like spoken, and some kids won't. But yeah, I think it also, like she says, has to do with your environment and like the consistency in what was the other word she used? I don't remember, but yeah, she kind of did go on that a little bit. That's why I was intrigued by it. But I said my share.
Alex is so smart.
What'd you say? What'd you say, Paola?
Oh, I said that you're so smart. Like, I'm just here, like, so intrigued.
Oh. Yeah, I have zero experience in sign language, so this is really interesting.
Yeah, I'm just listening to it, just like, wow, that's amazing.
I'm like just recently starting to learn it on my own, and it's actually really cool.
Yeah, I've seen it used in the classroom, and I've seen it used the most when in the kindergarten room, because that's where I've spent a lot of my time, where instead of, you know, like having to stop your lesson and say like, you guys need to sit down or please sit down or something like that, you literally look at the kid and go like this, because that's sit in sign language. You literally just go like this, you just sit right down, and you can continue to teach. You don't even have to stop talking in the middle of something. So, and then also like at assemblies where you're all sitting in a row and the teacher's down here and the kids that causing trouble is over here, you can just be like, and sit down. And so it's just, yeah, I mean, it's a really good, in my opinion, behavioral management as well.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely seen teachers use that in their classroom, and like it's just something that all the kids know how to understand, or like at least the few things that they teach them. Seems really effective.
Like bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Or like thank you, you know. Yeah.
Is that what bathroom means in sign language?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they do like this, right?
Make
Yeah.
Oh,
I did that. I did not know it was sign language.
See, there
I
you
just thought it
go.
was some cool little thing to do, and I had to go to the bathroom in kindergarten. Oh my goodness!
You know sign language, Paula.
Oh, I did not know. All right, that was really big. Oh my goodness.
Mind blown.
one thing that I found really interesting was the affective filter theory.
Oh yeah.
And just the fact that you can be an absolutely amazing teacher and you could be like just killing that lesson plan. But if there are certain things that would get in the way of actual acquisition. So like they might learn, but they might not actually understand or hold on to that information because of things as simple as like boredom.
Right.
Yeah.
Where like the motivation part comes in, and like the fact that you need to differentiate to get it to be to every single different type of learning, which is what I took it as.
Yeah. And like you were saying that, Nicole, in your post too, the same thing, that you can be like an amazing teacher, but it's really up to them and their filters, whether we have some effect on it or not. And you mentioned just like to create a classroom, like, or an environment that's, you know, encouraging and understanding of other kids, their cultures and whatnot, and their differences. And because like I was wondering the same too, like what else can we do other than being an amazing teacher to have some kind of effect on whether they can get rid of that filter? And all I could think of is just creating that environment for them. But what else can we do?
Because you can't
It's
really
hard.
force a kid to want to learn the language.
Exactly. You can't force them. So
Yeah.
that's really hard.
Yeah. And it sort of makes me think about my dad and his experience in school, because he we sort of joke around that his highest education is like late junior high, because he just sort of started to get the feeling that his teachers didn't care about him. And like he would go up and he'd be like, I don't understand this, can you please help me? And they'd be like, go sit back down and read the textbook. And they just sort of gave up on him, so he gave up on school. Like he never got a high school diploma because he just stopped going. And so it's like, if they had set up that environment of like, you can come to us for help, and it's like, we want everyone to learn, and like, I don't know, just like setting up that environment, he probably would have had a much different experience.
I feel like we all have those kind of teachers, you know, like at some point.
Yeah.
Like I had one like that in chemistry in high school. I was like in honors chem, and he was like always super rude if you like didn't understand something. And I remember like one day, it was like in the beginning of the year, I asked him to like explain something one more time because I wasn't understanding. And he literally laughed in front of the whole class and was like, that's why you're not going to be an AP Chem.
Ah,
Dude.
that's messed up.
But I feel like even, you know, things like that, it just like makes you, you know, like obviously I wasn't going to ask any more questions in that class after that happened. So then if I'm like ever confused about what's going on, I'm just going to like sit there and be confused, you know? I would have walked out. Yeah. I feel like, wow.
Older? Was he older? Was he an old man?
He was probably, I mean, he wasn't that old. He was like in his 40s maybe, but yeah.
Oh.
Interesting.
But even if you make that like welcoming classroom, there are still going to be kids who like just don't want to learn. Like I remember in like French, all 3 years, like I took it with the same people, but like they hated French. They didn't want anything to do with it. And like they weren't learning anything just because they didn't want to do it. So like, how do you get your students to care about the language they're learning?
Yeah,
I feel like that same thing can happen with ELLs. Oh, you say that could be a muddy question?
Mm-hmm. Like, how do you create an environment that makes students want to learn?
Mm-hmm.
Who's got the time? Does it show us the time on Google Hands?
Yeah, it doesn't have the time. We've been going for about 20 minutes.
You can see. I know, Joy's been commenting on our video every time, like, I need the minute.
Yes, I know. That's the one thing we keep forgetting.
It's because she doesn't want to watch us babble for an hour to find it.
Yeah.
Why did it not say the time?
I don't know. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's not really our fault here. The time's not there, so it's nobody's fault.
Let's see. Wait, what time? So like 4:09 was about when Paola got on. So we can say that we started at like 4:12.
Okay.
So yeah, that's 20 minutes.
Okay. I'll make a note.
Kill us.
We can go back and watch it and like find it later too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who's got time for that? I don't.
Nose goes for looking back for the muddy question.
All right.
I actually had a question. I think it was Paola. I think it was in your post. You were talking about like input +1, but I wasn't really understanding what that was. Could you explain that more?
Okay, yeah, it was actually really cool how Krashen's idea. So it was about, let me go and find it. So it was mostly about comprehensible input, so that's the I part. And then you have +1, which is just a little bit of well, more input, I guess, but enough for them to understand and go out into the world and like have a conversation, and then like that's, you know, with social interaction, that's how you learn. And so you just have to go little by little by little. And if you do like I +10, then it's too much and you overload them and they can't acquire to the language. And if you don't give them enough, you like I +0, they can't acquire the language either. So you have to do I +1 to give them a little by little by little to understand and acquire the language.
Okay.
So that's what the 1 meant.
But as far as language.
So is that like gradually introducing them to like socializing what they're learning?
Yeah, gradually introducing them to new concepts, you know, new words, phrases, like information that that'll help them little by little in a conversation or like, you know, socializing, any way to help them acquire language. You can't give them too little because they're not going to acquire the language or learn it. You can't give them too much because it's overloading. Just in the middle, that good sweet spot is what's going to help them. So that's what the 1 meant, and then the 10 and the 0.
Yeah. Okay. Scaffolding.
There you go, the teacher words.
And like that sounds a lot like zone of proximal development, like just above what they're able to do on their own.
Exactly, enough what they're able to do on their own.
I feel like when in doubt, the answer is ZPD.
Yeah, or scaffolding.
There you go. There's your career in schooling. ZPD or scaffolding. That's it.
My ed TPA in like 1 page. Yeah, just write big letters.
Scaffolding.
I love my 100 pages. Just repeat it.
So congratulations, here's your certificate.
Piaget and Vygotsky.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, Piaget is we're good.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but I like that +1 idea. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool when I read it because it makes sense. A lot of what he said was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This makes so much sense. How I thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's next?
I'm trying to find something to talk about here. I'm scrolling. Any magic questions, Teddy, that you have any written down?
Oh, yeah.
So basically talked about everything that I wrote down.
Oh, really?
I guess with my stuff, I kind of liked how I read where, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the names. Van Leer and was it Swam? Something with an SW.
Did we read the same articles? Hold on.
Well, this was in the chapter.
Oh, okay.
That they expanded on Crashin's. Did you say his name?
Yeah, you got it. Yep. Crashin.
That they kind of expanded on his what was it? Monitoring theory.
Mm-hmm.
Where he was saying about how like you need input and output, and they just kind of expanded on the fact that you learn with having both of them instead of just one or the other. So you basically learn from conversational as well as grammar and vocab. At least that's the way I took it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was kind of cool to like have everything. I felt like it just kind of made everything come together with everything that that we were talking that we heard from Crashin and then read from the chapter that like output or like input's necessary, input +1 and like all that stuff, and then they were saying that input and output is equally as necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Do we teach children like grammar when they're like not ELL students? Like, do we teach everyone grammar in elementary school still, or is that not really a thing?
I think so. Like verbs, adverbs, sentence structure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's mostly that sentence structure model that we actually read about, where they focus on like the pieces of the sentence, like nouns and verbs, and then like the rules of how those go together in a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So like basic, or well, I mean like you would need more of that support for ELL students, but so like would they basically be getting all of that language support they need, minus like maybe a little extra like pull out support in the classroom anyways? Like if you're already going to be giving, all these opportunities to discuss and read and write and all these things like with the whole class, which is what ELL students need to, and you're already going to be teaching grammar.
Well, I think that like last week we were talking about the fact that I don't even know what an adverb is. So, I mean, clearly I was not a success story in that area. But I think that we just kind of like correct students as we go. It's not as very like boom, boom, boom. This is what it is.
Not as explicit.
Yeah. Like you could read a child's writing and then you confer with them and be like, oh, like let's try reorganizing that. Let's hear it. Sound it. Does that sound better to you? Whereas if you were like more so teaching it as a second language, you're kind of like, where's the subject? Where's the verb? Where's the adverb?
You got it.
I got something to verb. Let's bring that.
But I'm pretty sure that they still teach like, or they do at least now teach more explicit lessons about sentence structure. Because I did like one of those like my music project, I think, right? Or for Gail's class that we took together.
Oh.
Yeah, I wrote it about like different parts of speech. And like that was one of like the Common Core standards now. So I'm pretty sure they're focusing a lot more on it now. So I don't know.
Music 361 with Gail. Take it.
Mm-hmm.
Next quarter.
It's a lot of beanbag tossing every single day.
I wanted to move different songs so much. I was so tired of the same songs
I
over.
know, me too. Literally, I'd leave that class with the same songs playing in my head all day.
I know. It's awful.
Yeah. But back to like ELL students, I feel like since they are going to be learning about the sentence structures in the classroom with the rest of like the English speaking students, I think it's just like learning like what certain words mean, I guess. Maybe.
Well, and I feel like you're also talking about younger students that still have the basic learning skills. If they were to come and if they were ELLs as in like the 6th or 7th grade, like we were talking about, I think like week 1, where you're just kind of like, they're already past the basic skills, but they don't have those basic skills. I think that's kind of where we run into the issues of like needing to be pulled out more and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, being retaught like the sentence structure kind of stuff that everyone else learned already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You done yet? We've only been talking for like 20 minutes.
Oh. ZPD. What is it? Go back to ZPD.
Yeah, scaffolding, anybody?
Language.
That's a really good question.
What was that?
Like, how do you scaffold language?
Oh,
I think that can be done in a bunch of different ways. I don't know if that'd be an overarching Medi question, unless that's what you're hinting at. Do you want me to write it down?
It could be a meta question. Why not?
I think we've kind of talked about that though too, about like just, you know, you scaffold it by doing like that, what, input plus one thing, and you know, slowly introducing words.
Yeah.
And having the conversations instead of just like Xing on the paper.
yes, social interactions. Where is that?
Yep. It's all about meaningful experience.
Exactly. We talked about that in my side class too the other day. We had this presenter, and he talked about how we as humans we learn through social interactions, not by sitting in a lecture hall or in a classroom for hours at a time. Like, we need to interact. Like hunters, like the men would interact with each other on strategies, and women would gossip. So this is how we are made to social. He was very passionate. So that just
Did he tell you that as he was lecturing you?
yes, in a big lecture hall. So he like apologized over and over again, but I sat there for like almost 2 hours, so it was rough.
Yeah. Don't you love it when teachers are like, don't lecture students. I'm going to lecture you on how not to lecture. It's great. It's grand.
So true.
So special.
Well, if we don't have anything else to say, she said we only have to talk for 30 minutes. Is there anything anyone like had to talk about at all? It seemed like we covered most of the topics.
Yeah.
Alex, were you the one that we had the same question with? I don't remember.
Probably. What?
I just because we both said different answers, and I thought it was really cool, and I thought it was really interesting. It made me think about like
you're okay.
why we
You're
have
okay this time.
Poor Alex.
no.
Which
Like, I don't remember
I
which
think we
one
had
it
a couple
was.
ones that were the same.
Huh?
Which one are you talking about? Because I think we had a couple questions that were the same.
I'm letter E.
Yeah, I think we had like 2 that were supposed to be the same or something.
Okay, so one of them, like, with the one where it said to pick a camp, like whether you're a nativist or interactionist.
Oh, yeah.
And you said you were an interactionist, and I said I was a nativist, and I thought it was a really hard question because, like, we were saying, like, the input plus output, like, they're both really important.
Yeah.
And I thought that too. It was a really hard question to, like, pick a camp
Oh, I know.
in a sense.
I was like, am I going to be there for the rest of my life? Like,
No.
is this a life decision? Is this life or death right now? I was very intimidated in picking a category.
And like you said, you chose the interactionist because there was more like structure for you. Like that's how you felt that you needed the structure. Because there was, I remember the chart, the figure in the book, and I didn't think about it as like structure wise until I thought about it, and I was like, structure is good. Like we need structure. And I guess at the time when I picked like nativist, I thought their like rules were too strict and like that's too concrete for me. Like I don't think it should be that way, which is why I chose nativist. Until you said like structure is, I mean, just the word structure made me like, oh wait, no, that's so much better. Like there's different steps. Whereas initially I thought of it as like it's too strict. It's one way, and it's like I didn't like it, so I thought it was really interesting.
Well, and also for me, like structure is like it could be super intense or it doesn't have to be super intense.
Right, and I didn't think about it. I thought it as like super intense.
Yeah. I always take everything like leniency.
Exactly. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really cool too. And I think it's funny how like we were thinking about the same thing, but we were just thinking complete opposites. And it's
yeah, and that's how I saw the nativist approach, or forgot the other name that it was used, as like more of a lenient approach and more of like a free for all, do it your own thing. Yeah. And the other one was like super intense, which is like why I didn't choose it. So
yeah. What is wrong with you?
No, not until I read your post and I was like, oh, I see. All right.
Yeah, so, yeah. You to leave everyone to question things.
That's all I had.
That was it. I just learned my life journey.
Anything else?
I think
outside of the recorded video, but
yeah, I think we're good.
Bye.
Bye.